Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Today we have with us Tom Libelt, founder, We Market Online Courses and host of Smart Brand Marketing Podcast. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking out time. You know, uh, it's great to have you. Really excited about talking to you about, what you do and the cool stuff you're doing. But before, we dive into it, it would be great if you could introduce yourself and, what you do at your company.
Well, this company that I'm doing now is very simple. We market online courses. So if you have a course and it's not selling, you call us. It's a very quick way to sell the company. It's a simple thing, and it's not simple doing it, but it's very simple explaining it. Right? That, like it hits the target audience right away. Now, before this, we had an SEO agency. We had a big marketing company. We had a book publishing company. I owned a coffee shop. I filmed a documentary, did some stuff in music, tons of sales jobs. I had a pretty deep background, but it all revolved around sales and marketing.
Right. I mean, how did the move to, marketing online courses happen?
So when we had the SEO agency, I was in Atlanta at that time, and we were working on a gym to get them ranking. It was a kickboxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Muay Thai gym.
Okay.
And, we did a really good job for them. They were getting more leads than ever before. And, when that happens, you kind of become friends with the people because, you're delivering.
Right.
So one of the managers was a Muay Thai champion.
Okay.
And he was, fighting professionally. He was doing some classes. And then, we were just sitting around like chatting in his office once. And he's like, Tom, what if we put my training online? You got to remember, this was like 7-8 years ago.
Right.
So, the tools were not there. Online courses were not common at all, other than just a couple of the big guys. And I looked at him, I was like, I know nothing about this. But again, that's how the ideas happen. And I'm like, fine, let's do it. Then a year or so after, because it took us a long time to get this going, we didn't know anything about filming, about putting this stuff on, memberships, any of that. He looks at me again and he's like, I would like you to market this thing. And I'm like, well, we do marketing, but not for online courses. Like we had e-commerce sites, we had, affiliates, we had all types of things. We're like, we don't. Again, I was like, fine. And again, the overnight success took like 2 years, before we really made money with it. And then referrals came in. And one day I was just sitting around with my team and I thought, we do fine with the marketing agency.
All right.
But if someone comes up and says, why should I work with you over like Jay Abraham or Dan Kennedy? I'd be like, well, if you have the budget, you definitely should not work with me. You should work with those guys. And I don't like that answer. So I thought, we're having a lot of success. And back then, this was maybe 20% of our business, the online course marketing. I was like, what if we dial in on that piece? Yes, it's a smaller pond, so it'll be a big fish in a small pond. And that's, good and bad, depends on how you look at it. But no one can ask me, why should I work with someone else other than you in that niche? Because I was like, well, these people would come to me with their courses. So we doubled down, and it was a really good decision for us. We started getting booked up almost immediately. So we've been booked up like constantly ever since then. When COVID happened, the industry exploded.
Yeah.
Right. So 4 or 5x easily in a month, like last April or last March. And look, this is luck, right? Like when we started and I did research on our entire market, we had maybe 80,000 possible course creators, maybe. And out of those, 2-3% could be ideal customers at the most that could afford us. And then overnight, it quadrupled.
Right.
So the thing that happened for us, which was very helpful, all of a sudden people with money, coaches, speakers, authors, that now they know what to do,
Yeah.
got into the business.
Yeah.
But
Right.
again, it was being at the right place at the right time, and that piece was lucky. Like we were doing really well before, but it just became insane after. And now it's getting back to normal again. Like there's a bit more competition, and I'm also much more picky with who I work with.
Right.
So, it's fine. There's like zero complaints on our side. But, it was that decision of going really deep into one niche that made everything easier for us.
Right. And it totally makes sense also, earlier you had like pure, SEO agencies, and okay, fine, they would work across, diverse niches. But now, SEO is just not SEO, right? I mean, you have to, handle the entire piece of marketing, because at the end of the day, you have to drive traffic, you have to drive conversions. So, I think it kind of makes more sense, because when you're focusing on a niche, you are actually focusing on the entire spectrum of marketing.
Yeah. So, with our SEO business, we've had a very easy time around 12, 13 years ago. Like, I mean, you just, stuck anything on Google and like, you could rank things. Then we've started seeing a division of local and main, I would say, countrywide businesses, right? Like you would rank them differently. You
Right.
can't rank a gas station in Utah, something, as you would a big chain or, yeah. So we started seeing that and like, okay, we kind of have to pick which way we're going to go with that. And the problem with Google, and, since you're in SEO, you know this, you have zero control.
Yeah.
So again, then we started thinking, do we keep messing around with the backlinks, which is the piece that we have zero control over it? I know it works and it's, easy to do in some ways, but it's expensive to do, right? Like if you want to actually own and control the properties
Right.
that you're going to send links from, it's not cheap, and now it's kind of hard to see the PRs on some of them. So you can, it was easier back then, everything. But then we started looking at the Onpage stuff. So like if this website comes to us and they're already getting traffic, they're fairly linked out, they're popular. If we fix all these on-page issues, starting from speed, silo, schema, like all this stuff, which is much easier to control, it always helps, right? So we kind of moved from like countrywide to local, and then from local to more on-page. And then what we realized too, and this is with any SEO whatsoever, people don't see results immediately.
Yeah.
So we thought any SEO client has to give us a bit of a budget for paid ads
Right.
so that we can quickly show them the changes in it. Because yeah, Google might take 3, 4, 6 weeks to rank and change your stuff. But if we throw the right traffic through it, you're going to see an increase in conversions.
Right.
And at least during that time, when you're waiting for this to happen, you're not whining to me about why there's no changes, right? Like, well, you're getting money, right? So
Yeah, and it's also a proof of concept, right? I mean, if you have conversions on, let's say, 10 keywords, it kind of is easier to explain to the client, okay, fine. Now, if you're also organically ranking on these 10, it might take time, but it's worth the money.
yeah, so we've made a lot of changes. Like with the course marketing, we don't do almost any SEO. So that kind of comes just from like referrals. We don't even advertise the SEO stuff anymore. And reason for that is most of the course creators, they're on platforms. Thinkific, Teachable, Kajabi, like all these different platforms. ClickFunnels. And these platforms are horrible to rank. Horrible. Like if I can get them off to WordPress and they actually build up their stuff, fine. I recommend a lot of on-page SEO stuff, and I'm like, look, here's how to get backlinks. But if you're like a regular creator on Teachable with a Teachable sales page and homepage and blog, which is not even a blog, I'm like, you're not going to rank this thing.
Yeah.
Like Google will completely ignore you. So our market sort of doesn't fit the regular SEO market. If we do have someone coming with like e-commerce store, for example, yeah, there's a lot of like, we have a couple clients that we've worked with for years, like they're still our clients after 7, 8 years, and they do run e-commerce stores. they see the value of that. They see what happens, even in a small niche, with low hanging fruit keywords. If we can get some of these moving, because it transfers directly into money, right? It's
Right.
not like, hey, I'm going to read this piece of content and then go to this and get a lead magnet. No, I'm going to look at this. If I like the product, I'm going to click buy, and they all see it immediately. So we're sort of only touching the SEO stuff where we can bring instant gratification for them, and even then I'll say, look, we're ranking you for these keywords. And like I told you before, we'll tell them we're going to run some paid traffic and show you why, because we're also going to do it through Google. So you're going to see exactly what type of traffic you're going to get and how this traffic is going to convert, what it's going to do for you. So then people get excited, right? And often what they'll do is they'll stick with the paid as well, right? So we actually have monthly retainers that have been running for 8-9 years, because once we show them, both, and now they're getting SEO and the paid, they're like, they own like the first 4 positions in Google. Like it's hard to stop.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, what are the areas where you feel that online course creators, struggle the most in marketing?
Marketing,
Yeah.
just marketing. So this is the problem here. Like, when you get someone with knowledge to create a course, usually packaging that knowledge is very frustrating for them, right?
Right.
Because you have to actually package it into something that's consumable and repeatable. Yeah, so this is a very big piece. Then you got to figure out the tech. Also very frustrating. But those are easy pieces, right? Like when you really think about that. And then when you stack the sales process and the marketing on top of it, imagine, when you're juggling the balls, right? And, you're doing like 3 or 4 at the same time, and I just threw 6 more at you.
Yeah.
And everything drops. So, they don't realize that with the marketing, you got to get people's attention. You got to have the right flow, which is their sales conversation. You got to get the copyright, because you can't sell them in person. The website's got to do the talking for you. You got to warm them up properly. There's just so many different pieces, right? And a lot of them kind of intermix, like if you have a site that's not selling at all and you come to me about marketing, I'm like, well, I can market this website and I'm going to get you 100 times more sales than you're getting now, which is 0. So there's going to be still 0 sales, right? So a big part of the job that we do is we make sure that the sales conversation is dialed in first.
Right.
Before we actually start marketing. And this sometimes takes a little explaining to the customer because they don't understand the difference. But I'm like, if you cannot sell it once, why do you think you can sell it 100 times?
Right.
It's not repeatable yet. So, well, it makes sense to you, but it doesn't to them. Like, the course creators have such a big problem with marketing for the most part that this is like starting from scratch completely. Now, some of them do get lucky. They'll post 100 videos on YouTube and they'll get some conversions and, sales. But even they quickly hit a limit. And they'll come to me like, hey, Tom, I'm making 5 figures, which is not hard if you get one channel and the right message. I got lucky, blah, blah, blah. I used to post 10 videos a week. Every month we made, 30% more sales. And now I can put 100 more videos and nothing happens. Well, because you hit that plateau with that thing with YouTube. And then when they try doing anything else, it doesn't work. I tried doing Facebook ads, didn't work. I put out different content, didn't work. So they don't understand why it happened. So you do have a very small piece of the market that's lucky, and they come to me to kind of reverse engineer it and then help them actually market it properly. But I would say over 60-70% just have no clue what they're doing.
Right, right. I mean, as per you, what are the best practices, for increasing conversions on the course sales page?
We actually created a worksheet that we share with our list about things to do on the sales page. There's like 17, 18 things. But I'll tell you the easiest way to do it, and it worked every single time. If you have traffic coming through and hitting your sales page, and it's not converting, change the buy button to a call me button, a book a call button, and get them on the phone. Because if you can figure out how to sell them in person, not just one person, do it maybe 3-4 times, use that, put it on the sales page, and I guarantee you it's going to work. Then you change it back to the buy button.
Right.
So when something's not working, it's often the copy. That's the biggest problem.
Right.
And, there are probably a lot of assumptions. Maybe there are some red flags. Maybe you're not moving them through the page properly. Get them on the phone. And I often actually help people get the right script, to go over on the phone. And then when they kind of hit the right points and then sell them, I'm like, okay, well, if you hopefully recorded this, we can now use it and create a real sales page out of that. But that would be the first thing I would do.
Right. Also, like you said, like a lot of your clients or online course creators are on platforms. So maybe like, SEO is not always, the best strategy for most of them. But still, there would be cases where you would be, doing SEO for them as well, since, you have been doing SEO for so long. How does your SEO process look like?
At the moment now, we'll usually only do on-page stuff. So we're going to fix up all the on-page issues on the website. And it, like I said, it only works for a very small percentage of clients.
Yeah.
If they, like I said, have a strong website, in a way, like it's fairly old, like aged with some traffic, they've placed the course on the website with some kind of a WordPress plugin, or there are different options for this, I'll consider it.
Right.
But anyone with a platform, I'll completely ignore it and be like, this is not the way. And the first thing I'll tell them, even then, is you got to move that sales page over to your own website.
Right.
So you control that. You need to control the sales process. But course creators overall, if I would look at, because we've done over 180 different clients in the last few years, 80% of them are not the right fit, even 90% not the right fit for SEO services. So it doesn't mix as well as you'd like to. Now, some have a lot of content, but it's often on YouTube and these other platforms. So you would do kind of like SEO for YouTube or, some of these. And since we don't specialize in that, I just tell them, I can lead them to someone, but I don't want to touch it.
Right. Also, I think you're right, because, like with the latest updates coming in, we did a test a few months back where, there was a website which kind of had dropped down in rankings, and, we compared it with a site that had, gained rankings. And the only difference we could, the pages that had dropped rankings, the only difference we actually saw in those pages was the speed, right? And that's something which is very difficult to control on these platforms, right?
We did a test about this, and I published it on one of my friends' website. Thinkific, Teachable, and I think ClickFunnels was the worst. They were all about 60-70% slower than your own WordPress site without even touching any of the fixes on it. So the speed is horrendous, and even without looking at the SEO, I always tell the clients, look, if your website's going to be 60-70% slower than what people are used to, you will be losing conversions. I guarantee it. And I show them the papers, the studies about, how each half second, but I'm like, just from a logical common sense point of view, if someone has to wait 3 extra seconds when they just clicked on 15 tabs and yours doesn't open, it's not going, you're going to miss it. So speed is very important. But yeah, what you said is right on. We found that with a lot of the websites, if you fix all these on-page issues and the content's good, backlink profile's fairly decent, you can outrank some pretty, powerful sites that don't do these things. So yeah, plus Onpage is easier to control, much easier to control, right? Like I don't have to worry about the bad backlink or anything. I'm like, look, we didn't touch your backlink profile. We just did this. You can't get hurt.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think now, like, on page is so important. And it's not only about, earlier I remember, you just used to maybe set up the title tags and the H1 tags and you were all set. But now, you also look at, the actual body of the content. But yeah, I mean, at least you have control on it and it doesn't hurt.
That's the part, man. Like everything we do, we try to get as much control as we can. We found all of our problems, like the walls we hit in business, were the times where we completely did not have control.
Right.
Like if I look back like 9 or 10 years ago, we still use this this service. I think it was called Build My Rank, but these were very popular back then.
Mm-hmm.
And you would pay them monthly,
Mm-hmm.
and you were able to submit like short articles, paragraphs with links in them, and they would post it all over these blog networks, right? So it was like
Right.
these big things. It was so popular everywhere. And I remember, I think we submitted like 6,000 to one of them because it was like 2, 3 years. We had a lot of clients. And one day Google de-indexed all of these services.
Right.
Right. And, obviously when people lost all those backlinks, we're like, but again, no control.
Right.
We
So,
had zero control over the blog networks. We had zero control over Google.
right.
And, we still had the business going. People still said like, okay, well, I know you'll fix this. But the question was like, do I want to?
Right. Right.
Right. Because, what if it happens again?
So, I mean, like coming back to your point, so earlier, when anything used to rank, so we owned like thousands of websites ourselves because, we owned a network and we would just push links and, they would get live. Then one day, we wake up and everything is down. Then, we kind of thought, okay, fine, now what do we do? Like, since we, still do SEO, now we kind of are at a process, when I tell my partners or clients that, I have, like one of the biggest outreach teams, they're like, why? I mean, because I said, because, everything is manual. That's the only thing that's working right now. You manually outreach legit sites, get, publish good articles. I will not give you a guarantee that, you know, this is the site will get, but, I can give you a guarantee that this is our success rate. And to make sure we get so many articles published on legit, let's say X sites, we would need Y number of, hours and stuff. And, a lot of them don't understand, but I think that's the only way now, to actually build a solid link profile. Otherwise, you might get a bump in rankings now, but any day, it might just all go away.
So one of the easiest ways I found of doing this is if you just go to conferences and build up your network, and all these people, you just ask them because you know them, like, hey, do you mind if I do a blog post on your website? And then some of these conferences, some of these are pretty big fish too. Like when
Yeah.
you look at their websites, like you're like, this is a very strong website, which normally they would completely ignore you. But if sort of a friend,
Yeah.
you're able to get these pages, and that's like I said, like my friend that guest article we did with the speed, he has a speed WordPress speed service.
Right.
And I was like, look, I'll do it in the course space. I'll give it to you. And normally he would tell me to go away, but since we're friends, he's like, yeah. So I find this is really the way.
Right. Right.
You can do it manually, or you can kind of speed it up by just networking for that,
Right.
and it'd be like, or we can just
Right.
exchange links. Yeah.
Right. Or even if you not, I mean, if you don't have time, but I think it's very important for you to make sure that whoever you're using for the service, I mean, make sure that, actually look at the sites. If somebody is not sharing the sites with you and just maybe charging you a price for X number of links, and
Oh yeah. No.
I mean, don't do that. I mean, I won't take names, but a lot of big fish out there are doing that, right? I mean, I did a test where I wanted to write a blog article on, comparisons, and I didn't hear back from them for a month. And after that, you just get a report. The article is live, the link is live. What do I do now, right?
Well, what you do then is you take a little excerpt from the article, you put it into Google, and you see what comes up,
Yeah.
and see if you're happy with those pages, because I've done that before.
Right.
And yeah, often it's a hit or miss. Like, the worst one for that is like Fiverr and all those things, man. Like they will tell
Yeah.
you like, yeah, we'll put you on an educational website, and yeah, they will, but it's going to be a wiki site, and they'll stick your like keyword in an article that's completely irrelevant
Right.
to what you're
Absolutely.
doing, and it's like, this makes zero sense. Because I've
Yes.
seen, a couple of years ago, I played with a couple of those, and it was just complete nonsense.
No, absolutely. I mean, like a lot of clients that come to us. So we never tell our clients that, you have to give a contract, you have to give minimum 10 links, 20 links, whatever. All we tell them is just do one link with us. And, a lot of my clients were like, okay, fine. They never expected that, we would actually share the sites with them before we actually, write articles, and then even, share the articles with them for approval. And they're like, how will you manage 100 articles? I said, no. I mean, when you do 20, 30 with me and you're okay with the language I'm using, and my writer has understood your business, then you yourself will say, okay, fine, I don't want to approve the articles, but I am giving you full transparency to
Yeah.
look at the site before your article is live there. So, I mean, talking about content, right? I mean, how do you like since I'm sure a lot of your clients or a lot of online course creators should actually write a lot of content and push it out there. So what how do you suggest them to create the perfect editorial calendar? I mean, how should they plan it out?
Yeah, this is really difficult. Like what we've been more focusing on now is just the copywriting aspect of it,
Okay.
right? So I always tell them, look, like usually for my business, I don't
Mhm.
need to do very much outreach to get clients.
Right.
I need to put out one or two really good pieces of content, and then people will come, because 80% of the time should be spent marketing that content. So I will often explain to them, through like examples and templates, like what you're going for, and create something that's really going to grab your audience. And instead of trying to put a ton of articles and be like all these other people with, these big calendars and I'm posting on social media every day, do two or three really good pieces and market them well, and you're going to cut through that noise. Because instead of doing so much mediocre stuff, but this is for getting clients or students. For SEO, it's a different story. And again, like I said, my current audience doesn't really work in that much. But for SEO, I usually tell people, look, you want to have a strong website ranking very quickly. Write 100 relevant articles with 4,000 words plus. What we found through some of our testing, and I know some of my friends use this strategy, so we know it still works. 100 is a good number, but between 100 and 150 articles, 4,000 words is that magic number where Google just all of a sudden opens the kind of the water for you. Like you just start getting, the hose opens up and the traffic starts going in. And some of these we've had zero backlinks built to. It's just this magic number, which is it's a lot of content though when you really
Yeah,
think
it
about it.
is. It is.
It's a lot of content. But everyone that tried it went from like zero to thousands of people coming on their website. And I said, that's one way. You know, you got to kind of calculate the investment if
Right.
that's the way you want to go. Because I just had a friend that built up a productized service
Hmm.
and he used my strategy. I think it cost him like $17,000, to go on Upwork, I think, and all these places and, get these articles written. But he came back and saying, yeah, Tom, it worked. Around 100, maybe 13, 12, 13 articles, he said, and it just went crazy. It just went like from trickling to, so that's one piece of advice with the content. Now with course creators, it's not really, the right way. Like I would much rather tell them, why don't you film 113 quick YouTube videos?
Right.
You'll get traction much faster. But for something like a productized service, that could be worth it. It depends how long you want to be running this business and then what's your investment, but that could really be worth it in the right niche.
Right.
And then if you get everything else right, the Onpage, and then you actually get some backlinks, like, yeah, you're going to do well. We did have one course creator in the photography niche
Mm-hmm.
that was able to do what I told him. He
Mm-hmm.
mixed videos with the content and gave like templates and stuff, but it came out to about 100 something articles, and he
Mm-hmm.
went to about 200,000 visitors per month very quickly. And that transferred to sales in his niche very quickly. But he had the one thing which Google loves is content that's very mixed, right? So words, a lot of good images, videos, long on-page time, low bounces, because it's photography, it's
Yeah.
nice to look at. So in his instance, it was just a perfect way to do it. And everything he did was on his own website, course plugin, a lot of bundles that he was selling, a lot of how-to tutorials on every different aspect. I was like, yeah, for you, it's a no-brainer. But that was the one that I remember that kind of used that strategy.
Right. Podcasts are doing well. You also have your own podcast. I mean, how do you see podcasts as a marketing strategy?
So my podcast in the beginning um, was just a way to meet people, right? About the first maybe 30, 40 episodes. Then what we tested is there are a lot of things we didn't know how to do in our business, because this was like quite a few years ago. And I thought, you know what, instead of paying people, let's get them on a podcast. And it worked really well. Like, we wanted to know about Kickstarter and all these stuff. So we brought all these experts. I would go to my friends and I would say, like, who's the coach that you would pay $2,000, $3,000 for in this topic? And they would say, yeah, I'd be like, okay, let's get them on the podcast. Then it turned into, as we were transitioning into the course niche, I said, let's get our perfect clients on the podcast. And then we closed almost every single one of them. And later, after that, it just became like, I do what I want, right?
Right.
Just have fun with it. So just different iterations. But the one thing podcasts will do for you, at least, it really works for us. One, you can answer bigger questions that your prospects or clients ask you. Just listen to this episode. We went over this. Or they'll listen to a couple of your episodes, especially if you have pretty famous people on it that they know. And it gives you a lot of social proof.
Right.
So when you sell them, you kind of skipped over this, let me show you, that I'm trustworthy. Let's just get right into the meat of it. Like, how can I help? Where if you don't have any of this, like, you have to kind of prove to the person, like, are you even the right one for the job? A podcast and, good case studies and some decent content will fix all of that. So you can go straight into, let me figure out if I want to work with you.
Right.
Right. Because with us is even a little more now, because we're really picky. Like, if you come to us, you're not choosing us. We're going to look at, we want to work with you because we have enough clients. But the podcast makes that possible. I would say it's a big piece of letting us be so picky, because people will come and say, yeah, I listened to like 10 of your episodes. I watched this, and that. Like, I want to work with you. It's just right off the bat.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, Tom, I know we are, like low on time here. So before, you go, I mean, one last question. What are the top three trends, you know, you think would be there for online course marketing this year?
So with trends, it's interesting. Like, I'm seeing a couple things. I'm seeing cohorts a lot, right? So instead of throwing someone into an online course and maybe providing weekly coaching, I'm seeing a lot more like organized community building within the courses, right? So you kind of come off of this as if you've went to a digital conference, have you spent time with people for like a couple weeks, right? So you might have an accountability buddy, you might have a little team that you're doing team projects on. Like, I'm seeing these little cohort things, and they're working really well. Another thing that I'm seeing is people sort of moving away from these flagship courses
Mhm.
and selling a lot of smaller things on like Gumroad and stuff, right? On these, so you're not really using Udemy. You're not going on these little, devalued marketplaces, but you're keeping all that you're making, and they're going like bite-sized, very small. I'm going to solve a big problem that you have and nothing else in like a 10-minute video, or and people love this. I'm
Right.
seeing a lot more of that. Like if you went like in 10 minutes, I'm going to help you able to speed up your WordPress sales page, right? And within 10 minutes, you just taught them this and sold it for like $47. And I'm seeing this work really, really well, and people are making very big money with it. Another one I'm seeing, which I don't like, because it's not an easy thing to do when people fail a lot, is for some reason, so many creators are trying to build schools, right? So instead of trying to build out just one course or sell someone on a couple of programs or a bundle, they're like, I am going to create an entire educational field, and there's going to be 80 courses, and I'm going to push people through like it's a school, and they're comparing it to universities. And I'm seeing them fail left and right. It's a big trend now. I don't know where it came from, but even me, I see a lot of people coming and be like, look, I need your help with marketing. I have a school I'm trying to build. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to get into that. And then a lot of them will come back later saying like, okay, I picked the one course I'm going to go after, and then we're going to build a school. It's like a very weird trend. I don't know why, but people are trying to build something that's a little bigger
Mhm.
that they can manage. But it's a big trend too. I'm seeing, and I'll give you an extra one too. Anything with homeschooling right now, it's just making a killing.
Right. Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time. It was fun having you. Hopefully, we'll catch you up some other time again.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in Chiang Mai and I'm in Chiang Mai again, when this is over, definitely, because I usually hang around the time where the conferences are.
Uh-huh.
Like we have one in Bangkok usually, like that kind of overlaps the SEO conference. So sometimes I'm only around for like a day or two. But yeah, definitely if you're around, man, yeah, it'd be fun.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much.